Well, I wanted to read some of the pieces, some of the excerpts from some of my favourite books that I'm indulging myself, but one of the things that I found since being in the Philippines is that it's necessary. It's extremely important to read while you're here. And one of the reasons for that is because if you haven't learned a language, like I haven't learned the language, you are in isolation for a lot of the time. So you have to be able to deal with that. And one of the ways that you deal with it is by reading. Now, I do look at the phone an awful lot. In fact, I'm looking at the phone right now. It's also my camera, and it's just not the same. It's not the same as holding up a book, which I'm now holding up a book, and it's by, I know that you can't see it because the camera, for some inexplicable way to this non-tech old fart, it turns things around. I should try and find out how to flip that. So this is by Truman Capote, and one of the reasons that you need to read is because, and you need to read out loud. So I read out loud, and when I give anything to Beth to read, I say, "Oh, read this that I've given you," and she will read it, and she will flash through it. So she's reading it as if it sounds like this. Imagine a morning in late November, a coming of winter morning, more than 20 years ago. Consider the kitchen of a spreading. That's not reading to me. You need to read as if the scene is unfolding, and you need to do that in order to keep your speech intact, your vocabulary intact, because when you are here, you will find yourself saying things like "off the light" instead of saying "switch off the light" or "turn off the light" or "turn on the light." That would be an oversimplified example, but you unconsciously simplify the English that you speak to your Filipino wife, because you learn very quickly that sometimes they, in their non-confrontational way, they will say that they understand. See, so you might actually, if for instance you wanted, this says, imagine a morning in late November, and so if you said to your wife, "Oh, imagine a morning when we can go to the store," and then you think, imagine, I wonder if she knows that, and you say, do you understand the word imagine? And they say yes, and very quickly you learn to say, and what does it mean? And straight away, without a change of expression, she'll say, I don't know. And then you enter into the twilight zone of trying to understand why. Well, why did you say that you understood it? And she'll say, I don't know. You just got to move on. So it's important to keep your vocabulary up. Remember those real life situations where someone gets marooned on some kind of isolated, uninhabited island, and he's there. There was one that they made a movie of, and he forgot how to speak English. He forgot how to speak. He didn't forget totally, but because he had not been speaking at all, his mouth lost its motor skills. So I'm conscious of that, and I try to enjoy being both the cause and the effect, the talker and the listener, and that's how I try to read. But this story by Truman Capote is a Christmas memory. Now, Truman Capote stayed for the very first part of his life up to maybe, I think, 9 or 10 years old, and he lived with an aunt, his aunt, and they occupied part of a large house in which there were other relatives who rarely ever came to see them or interfere with them, and they were supported in that way. But he always referred to his aunt as my friend, and she referred to him as Buddy, in memory of her best friend of her own childhood, and her best friend was called Buddy, and Buddy had died, and she continued to use the name Buddy with Truman Capote, which he accepted, and they had this wonderful relationship, and she took care of him. But because she was slightly less than perfect, I hope you understand what I'm saying there, she was childlike in her way, which worked very well with Buddy Truman, and they had this idyllic existence, a life. But anyway, in the first sort of page, he describes a little of her, which when I talk a little bit later about how the kind of things that they experience, you'll understand. Imagine a morning in late November, a coming of winter morning more than 20 years ago. Consider the kitchen of a spreading old house in a country town. A great black stove is its main feature, but there is also a big round table and a fireplace with the 2 rocking chairs placed in front of it. Just today, the fireplace commenced its seasonal roar. And then he goes on to the lady, his friend. A woman with shorn white hair is standing at the kitchen window. She is wearing some tennis shoes and a shapeless grey sweater over a summer calico dress. She is small and sprightly, like a bantam hen. But due to a long youthful illness, her shoulders are pitifully hunched. Her face is remarkable, not unlike Lincoln's craggy like. Not unlike Lincoln's, craggy like that, and tinted by sun and wind, but it is delicate too, finely boned, and her eyes are sherry-coloured and timid. "Oh my," she exclaims, her breath smoking the window panes. "It's fruitcake weather." The person to whom she is speaking is myself. I am 7 years old. She is 60-something. We are cousins, very distant ones, and we have lived together, well, as long as I can remember. Other people inhabit the house, relatives, and though they have power over us and frequently make us cry, we are not, on the whole, too much aware of them. We are each other's best friend. She calls me Buddy, in memory of who was formerly her best friend. The other Buddy died in the 1880s, when she was still a child. She is still a child. "I knew it before I got out of bed," she says, turning away from the window with a purposeful excitement in her eyes. "The courthouse bell sounded so cold and clear, and there were no birds singing. They've gone to warmer country. Yes, indeed. Oh, Buddy, stop stuffing biscuits and fetch our buggy. Help me find my hat. we're 30 cakes. We've 30 cakes to bake. This was the time around November that they always used to get together and they used to bake cakes. And part of the adventure is how they bake those cakes. I know it sounds pretty boring, but somehow the magic of the words make it so that you literally cannot put the book down. It's always the same. A morning arrives in November and my friend, as though officially inaugurating the Christmas time of year that exhilarates her imagination and fuels the blaze of her heart, announces, "It's fruitcake weather. Fetch our buggy. Help me find my hat." The hat is found, a straw cart wheel corsaged with velvet. Roses out of doors has faded. It once belonged to a more fashionable relative. Together we guide our buggy, a dilapidated baby carriage, out to the garden and into a grove of pecan trees. The buggy is mine. That is, it was bought for me when I was born. 'Tis made of wicker, rather unravelled, and the wheels wobble like a drunkard's legs. But it is a faithful object. Springtimes we take it on the woods and fill it with flowers, herbs, wild fern for our porch pots. In the summer we pile it with picnic paraphernalia and sugarcane fishing poles and roll it down to the edge of a creek. It has its winter issues too, and as a truck for hauling firewood from the yard to the kitchen, as a warm bed for Queenie, our tough little orange and white rat terrier who has survived distemper and 2 rattlesnake bites. Queenie is trotting beside it now. So you get this incredible thing told from a child's point of view that includes someone that sees the world from a child's point of view. And this is why reading books is so important. It says, where was that little bit? See, the buggy is mine, that is, it was bought for me when I was born. 'Tis made of wicker, rather unravelled, and the wheels wobble like a drunkard's legs. If you are here and listening to a foreign language that you don't understand, to read your own language and so beautifully expressed is a real exercise in retaining your sanity, in retaining your ability to be alone without being lonely. So I'll leave it at that. 13 minutes and 31, 2, 3 seconds.